Good morning, Grant.
Hello.
Are you usually up by this time, or did the
No.
did the change in hour help you a little bit?
It helped a minor amount.
What time do you get to work usually?
11.
Oh God, I wish I could do
Noon.
that.
But usually I don't go to bed till like 5, 6.
Is that because you're still cooking, or is that because you're
It's,
creating in your head?
There's all kinds of stuff going on.
5 or 6, so that's like 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah. That's why I look
can't do that.
like I do right now.
I think you look great. I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Thank you.
I was thinking since these folks put us together, that there had to be a reason for that. So I thought that maybe we could talk. Maybe we could begin by talking about what you're doing right now. And the reason is that when I go and visit an artist studio as a curator, whether it's an emerging artist, brand new out of the gate, or whether it's somebody like Chuck Close or Jasper Johns, I usually like to begin with exactly what they're doing today, and then circle back, and then see if we can bring up some connective threads. Does that seem like a good idea?
Sure.
So, of course, the first thing that I want to talk to you about then is this pop-up event that happened in September and October with 11 Madison. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I feel like, for us, we're always, Alinea and Next in the aviary are venues that we always try to continually reinvent, right? But we always look beyond that. And we say to ourselves, what can we do? What is new? What is relevant? What is something that nobody has done?
Right.
And doing the 11 Madison Park swap was something that was seemingly impossible. Like, most people go, like, why and how is that even fathomable,
Right.
And when we did it, I have to tell you, it was rewarding on so many different levels, but the most important for us and the 11 Madison Park team was a sense of collaboration.
And we should mention, because we shouldn't get too insider, that 11 Madison is one of the preeminent restaurants in New York City.
Yeah, they're okay.
I know, you're the one with the 3-star Michelin, I know. And it's run by your good friend Daniel Hum.
Yes.
So first and foremost, it must have taken a ton of trust to make this happen.
And that was, again, that was like you couldn't do this with any restaurant. When you think about, in the art world, imagine an artist. No, I'm sorry.
No, I was just thinking, would I trade with Neil Bernezra in San Francisco?
Right.
No
exactly.
way.
Exactly. And it's a bizarre thing. There's a level of trust that we have with each other to allow him to come into my restaurant and me to go into his and take it over. It's kind of unprecedented.
Right. And you decided to call this venture the 21st Century Limited. I love how you got to that. Tell us about that.
Well, basically, there was literally we were trying to figure out how to link the two together. And there was a train that ran between New York and Chicago. And so we kind of latched onto that identity, and
it's beautiful.
It's gonna go further.
Oh, that's great. You're the first to hear.
Yeah.
I love it. It ran from 1902 to 1907 between Grand Central Station and the LaSalle Central Station. Yeah. And it's where the term red carpet treatment comes out.
Exactly.
Because when you arrived at one or the other city, they would roll out the red carpet. And the men would get carnations and the women would get perfume. I love that.
It was, the whole thing was It started, to be completely honest, it started when Daniel and I and Will were at the aviary for their cookbook launch. And we hosted them for their Chicago segment of the launch, and we really were good friends, and we enjoyed working together, and we said, what can we do beyond this? Like, how can we make this something else? And we said, well, we should swap restaurants. And it was kind of a joke, and Daniel had a couple cocktails in him, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And it just went from there. And it took a year to make it happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It was fun.
Wow.
And it was a great, you know, when you get in that situation, you have the teams that come together and everybody learns so much. And even me, like personally, working with Daniel and Will and seeing how they approach their restaurant and their service, and it was really beneficial for everybody, I think.
That's where you are now. Now let's circle back all the way to the beginning and see if we can jump ahead back to the present. So, even as you are famous for the most progressive of American cuisines, you know, what it's called molecular gastronomy, it's called progressive American cuisine, it's called all of these things. Your roots, on the other hand, are, you know, comfort food in 3 generations now of family restaurants, including yourself. Can you talk a little bit about not the differences, but actually the similarities between the food that you grew up making and eating in your grandmother's and your parents' restaurant and the food that you're making now?
I can.
Go on.
But can I back up for 1 second?
Sure.
I feel like, you know, when we speak about creativity and the collaboration with 11 Madison, I think what that really showed us, why is it possible that, okay, say a musical act,
Yeah.
say Cirque du Soleil,
Yeah.
say an art exhibit
Yeah.
that rotates through various venues, whether you be the Rolling Stones and you travel to London and San Francisco and LA and New York and this and that, or, you know, where you have an exhibit that goes from the Tate Modern to MoMA to the Met to this, you know, why doesn't a restaurant do that?
Absolutely. Actually, one of the things that interests me so much about your career is how you delve into other industries' ways of operating and take that as well. And what you're bringing up that was particularly striking to me in terms of Alinea and Next, where I've had the pleasure of eating, is one of the things that you're bringing up is that my perception is that one of the issues that you are currently playing with is how to activate the audience, and that's something that is I think new in cuisine, but not in art. It's been in art since the Dadaists in 1912 in Zurich.
Right.
But it seems to me that that's something that you are particularly drawn to right now. I read somewhere, I think it was your partner Nick, and it is in the Alinea cookbook. I read from Nick, I'm paraphrasing. Most restaurants help their guests escape from engagement. We insist on the opposite. So
Right.
why is that important to you right now? This sort of movement into theater, into really kind of participatory theater.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, I think, you know, we talk about the evolution of the restaurant, and, you know, you can, it's very, you can map it out. Just like the art world, or anything else, technology, you can see restaurants going in these waves.
Right.
And, you know, you have your Charlie Trotter, your Thomas Keller, your Gray Coons, your Daniel Boulud, that in the late 80s and 90s, they were, and I'm, you know, generalizing, but they were all kind of cooking the same food. They were in that same genre. They were cooking in that same style. And then you got your Ferran Adrià, and you got all the Spanish guys, but it's very mappable. You can see it. And now you have Noma. You have the Nordic cuisine that's like taking a hold of gastronomy. I think right now, the next wave in cuisine, at least from the Alinea perspective, is, like you're saying, participatory theater. Like,
emotion,
yes,
as much as
but,
food.
I mean, we've been doing that, but taking it even a step further and trying to involve more artistic elements, more emotional elements.
Right.
You know, and I think that people will not like it. But I'm okay with that.
Well, they won't like it for a while, and then it'll be the next thing you're going to have to clear because
Right.
they'll want you to keep bringing it back as a signature dish.
Right.
So-
But like even now, like if you go to Alinea tonight, the hallway that you enter into is filled with pumpkins and hay and dead oak leaves. And when you when you open that front door, it smells like fall. And that to me is like an expression of cuisine.
Yeah. You're more invested in aroma than any other chef whose work I've followed or studied. And I'm a fan. I'm no expert. I'm just a fan. But you're really invested in aroma. Why is that? And scent.
Well, when you think about it, you can detect 4 or 5 flavors on the palate, depending on if you believe in umami, right? Let's not go there, okay? But there's over 657 smells, food-related smells, that you can detect.
And
So
smell
think
is
about that,
also-
like-
yeah.
Smell is such an important part of taste, and people don't really realize that.
And it's also the most primitive. You smell before anything else, before you see, before
And it's
you touch.
exactly, and it's nostalgic. Like,
Deeply.
Think about like, I remember there's a certain connection between smell and memory that people don't realize. This is something that, you know, in the art world is underutilized. Like when we talk about cooking and we talk about using all the senses, imagine the apple pie that your grandmother used to bake. You have that memory, boom, and it connects, you know?
Is that why you wanted one of your menus at Next to be childhood? You wanted people to experience that trigger?
Well, that was a creative jumping off point. And I think that when we speak about creativity, and whether it be in cooking or any other venue, you're always forced to look at problems, right? Because problems are creativity.
Right.
So we said, what do we do with childhood? What is childhood? Macaroni and cheese, peanut butter and jelly. And we just spin on that.
So that's interesting. So what is eluding you right now in your work? What are you sort of saying to yourself? You know, what's eluding you right now?
I mean, why does a restaurant have to have a permanent address? Right?
I don't know.
I mean, you know, going backward, you know, food is one thing, but now creatively, we can make amazing food. We can manipulate, we can shape shift the food, we don't even have to put it on plates anymore. But then looking beyond that, why does Alinea have to exist at 1723 North Halsted? Doesn't.
It doesn't.
Move it to San Francisco. Move it to New York. Go here, go there.
And
Who
then
cares?
what are the consequences of that?
Take over Charlie Trotter's. I'm not going to do that.
That's really funny.
But, you know, it's like,
Well,
when you think about...
well, what about this then? Well, what about this? Could Alinea happen anywhere else? I
Yes.
mean, is Alinea a Midwestern? Is Alinea
No.
also, you know, Burnham, make no small plans? I mean, could it only have happened here?
We proved that it can exist in New York. And if it can exist in... Why not take it to Paris?
Yeah,
What about London?
yeah.
You know? Like, and if you did that, what more creativity could come from it? Like, think about if we moved, let's just say that we put Alinea at the French Laundry in Napa Valley for a month. How would that creatively inspire us? Mm-hmm. Based on the products, based on the terroir, the regionality of it all. That to me is like exciting. Like, why? Why does it have to have a permanent address?
So one of the
Our
things...
lease comes up in like 18 months, so you never know where it's going to go.
So one of the questions that you raised for me as you're speaking is a quandary that many of my artist friends have who have a very strong career. And I'm thinking in particular of one dear, dear artist friend of mine, MacArthur Award, Genius Award winner. And the driving force for this artist is to create anew. And yet he has gallery dealer, collectors, art historians. There's a kind of, there's a point where the pressure to actually deliver a consistent product starts to really press, i.e. signature dishes for you. And you've built a repertoire that people really want to revisit, like your black truffle explosion.
Right.
So how do you balance that? How do you balance your absolute need and right to create with the fact that you have built a repertoire that also needs to be honored and wants to be honored by your clientele?
It changed a lot. In other words, there was a point when I was young.
Oh, yeah. What, 36? James Beard Award, hello. You're not even 40.
I was naive and I was like, you know, I'm never gonna have a signature dish. I'm never gonna do that. That's blah, blah, blah. But then at some point, like you're saying, you know, you need to honor the fact that, one, people will really like it and they find satisfaction in it. So it's like Nick, the co-owner and next Alinea and Aviary and my business partner, would often say, you know, the Rolling Stones, they play Satisfaction.
It's true.
All the time.
It's true.
And you gotta think, They're bored to death of it. But it makes people happy, you know? And so when we do the hot potato, cold potato, when we do the black truffle explosion, are we bored with it personally? To a certain point, yes. But then you go, well, if it's making people happy, then we need to do it. And then you go, actually, it feels really good to know that you're making something that makes people happy, you know? And if you're singing the same song night after night, yeah, you might be bored of it, but at the same time, you're not bored of it because it makes people happy.
Yeah, that in and of itself creates some
Yeah.
kind of creative fuel for you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned hot potato, cold potato.
Yeah.
And we were talking just a few minutes ago about the importance of language as a driving mechanism for you. Can you talk a little bit about that in your creative process? Does language come first? Does sometimes? Or is it a play always on language? Or how does language operate in your work?
I mean, for me at this point, I like to think that cooking is an art. And it's going to sound pretentious and goofy, but it is a craft and it is an art. I feel like I can tell you a story through not just an individual, not just this, but a menu. So why is it not like a book? It is, actually. And it's an expression of not only me, but the 25 cooks that are in that Alinea kitchen.
That's right.
And I think that's powerful. I think it's important for people to recognize. Like Michael Ruhlman, who contributed to the Alinea cookbook and is a good friend of mine, he's adamant that cooking is a craft. It's not an art. And we have this argument all the time. And I tell him he's full of shit. Because I feel like it can be artistic. And it's not like doing like this on the plate. That's not what I'm talking about.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about, like you're saying, like a language. Like expressing yourself through food. That's our medium.
A language that results in an experience for the receiver.
Why is it different than reading a great novel?
Or seeing a piece of great theater.
Exactly. I think it's the same.
That it's interesting you bring that up because there was this article in the editorial page of the New York Times last Sunday that talked about that. I don't remember the name of the writer, but he was saying how not only that this person say cooking is a craft, not an art, but the other point that this writer made is that food now has taken on all the attributes of the 1% status symbol that visual arts used to have, connoisseurship, and that there's an entire world now built around food, academics, journalism, television, but that was what was interesting to him was that now it operates as a kind of status and entree point in the way that connoisseurship around art used to. How do you where does that sit with you? You deliver at a very, very high level of culture.
It seems a little self-important when you. First of all, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, we'll write him a letter to that effect. Love, Grant.
Can somebody
you don't know what
email
you're
him,
talking
please? But look, I mean, whether it be food or art, paintings, drawings, movies, music, whatever it is, people are going to draw from it what they want. If people are into food and it speaks to them and it resonates with them, if it's compelling, then it's art.
True.
If it doesn't, and they look at food as just sustenance and nutrition, okay, that's fine. Don't go to Alinea. You know?
Go to your parents' place.
Right.
Right.
Go to a diner, and that's where I grew up. And you get your Western omelet with hash browns and buttered whole wheat toast, and everything's good in the world.
But that leads me to the question that you didn't want to answer earlier.
You know I avoided that, right?
I know, but it's a good question, isn't it? Unless you don't
Yes.
want to answer it.
No,
But
it's
seriously, not the difference, but the similarities that you actually, that I would like, I take the liberty of saying that you sometimes actually deliberately surface in your food today.
Yes.
Steak, but not.
Right. And I think that what my father still owns a diner in St. Clair, Michigan. 4,000 people. And they're open 7 days a week, breakfast, lunch, dinner, they're doing the whole thing. And when he comes to Alinea or next, it's not dissimilar. Like you're saying, it's because ultimately you're satisfying a core.
Right.
And there can be several ways that you can do that. In St. Clair, Michigan, think about it. The same people come every day. When they walk into that building, they don't even need to order. They literally go at the same chair, at the same table, at the same time, every day. They don't even have to order because everybody knows what they are, This guy wants burnt toast and scrambled eggs and, and it's just like the dude sits down and it's like that. But it satisfies on a level.
Right.
The same thing happens at Alinea.
Yeah. Yeah, your parents' place sounds like a pillar of the community.
It is a pillar, yes.
And a gathering place.
Yes.
And both.
It satisfies on a certain level.
Yeah.
And Alinea does as well. And like right now at Next, we're doing Kyoto. If you've never been to Japan, you get to experience it there. If you have been, then it satisfies you in a certain way. It's the same thing. It's a visceral satisfaction.
Yeah. So let's talk about Next. I've been to Il Bulli and I've been to Sicily, and it's been great. Next.
Is it all right?
What?
Was it all right?
Yeah, it was all right. I got really drunk, I have to say. It's
Perfect.
No. That's my constructive criticism. And actually, your colleague said, yeah, we've since ratcheted it back on the alcohol, because it was like after 21 servings at El Bulli between.
Yeah, that was a little tough.
Oh my God, it was. Yeah, I was really. Yeah. It was not good. It was not pretty. Anyway, so let's talk about Next, because it's an amazing invention on a number of levels, Grant. And let's first talk about how it's an amazing invention on this online booking system, which is really unprecedented. I mean, not only have you invented in gastronomy, but you've just like deconstructed every aspect of it. And how did you arrive at the online booking system?
People hate us.
No, actually, well, maybe, but.
Well, it's like we're saying, you hit it right on the nose where you deconstruct. So you look at every aspect of your given field, and you go, why is it like that?
Right.
You know, literally, and I've said this many times, at Alinea prior to, recently we went to tickets at Alinea as well, but prior to that, we paid 4 reservationists, whatever, $50,000 a year, right? 4 of them, to answer the phone and tell people that they could not come to my business and spend their money.
That's
it makes
stupid.
0 sense,
It makes 0 sense.
right? So I'm paying people to tell people that they can't come, so I can't make money. So we go to tickets, and you know, we break down the whole system, and we go like, why is it? People don't realize this. Check this out. If you have a 4-top tonight at Alinea, and you only show up with 3 people, I lose money. People don't realize that. The margins in the restaurant industry are so slim.
Right.
10%, 9%. So if a 4-top shows up with 3 and that seat goes vacant, we lose money. Nobody knows that. None of you know that. I know that.
Yeah.
So now when we go to tickets and we go, and people are like, you know, it's non-refundable, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
We need to be responsible as business owners, you know?
Yeah. No, I was reading this great article in New Yorker a couple weeks ago about your friends at 11 Madison, and they were talking about how they really have to walk this fine line between outward generosity and back of the house, just, you know, really towing it really close to the budget line. And that's a really, that's a tough, that's a tough rope to walk.
Right.
So and again, in terms of how you're like stealing from other industries, it's not that, you know, it's like buying an airplane ticket. You know, you pay more when it's a more demanding time of day or evening, and you pay less.
Right.
Now, what about this whole scalping thing? Are you happy about that or unhappy about that? Because people are starting to trade these reservations on the web.
It really isn't that prevalent. I mean, it happens every now and again. You'll see them on Craigslist, but think about this: like, why is it okay to no-show at a restaurant or not honor your reservation? In other words, if you go through Ticketmaster and you buy a ticket to the Bruce Springsteen concert at Madison Square Garden.
I would not no-show for that.
You know, your babysitter doesn't show up.
Doesn't matter.
Your kid throws up. But you don't call Ticketmaster and go, hey, I can't come, I need my money back.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it seems to be acceptable to demand the fact that when you go to a restaurant and you don't show up and you have a reservation, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
It's interesting. Actually, one of the things that I do like about that, other than, you know, satisfying your frustration about this.
Do I seem frustrated?
No,
a little bit.
But one of the things that I like about it for me, as someone who's going there, is it gets the business transactional part out of the way.
Right.
And then you arrive, and this head honcho says hi, and you never go through that.
There's no
You
monetary
never go through that
transaction.
deflationary moment
Right.
where you receive the check and all that. You
Right.
just
That's the worst part,
You
right?
walk. Yeah. Why should you end a meal like that?
No, you shouldn't, because it's a big check.
Exactly. It's a big freaking check. So I like that. I never get to see that.
Right.
It's great. I like that. Now, one of the other amazing things about Next is that you're going through these marvelous moments in time and running through the kind of history of cuisine. So, and you started with the beginning of Western haute cuisine with Paris, 1906, and El Bulli, 1983 to 2003, 29 courses, which is 29 pieces of alcohol, which is why this had to be adjusted.
That was bananas.
Childhood, Sicily, it's just amazing. I mean, it's like about the exploration of, a serious exploration of history and creativity across time and space and sort of moments like Chef Adrià. It's wonderful. How do you navigate it so that it doesn't become a kind of time travel Disney-fied? What to you makes the crux of the difference, so that it doesn't fall into that, especially with regard to ethnic cuisine, so that it doesn't fall into a kind of inadvertent stereotyping or quote?
I think it's difficult, to be honest, and I think that with anybody that's expressing themselves through whatever medium, the most important thing is to be a really good self-editor.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much stuff that we throw away. People don't realize.
Wow.
You come up with this idea and you go like, yeah, that's not gonna work.
Wow.
We tread that line. Like right now with Kyoto, we purchase these birch wood tabletops. So it feels like you have that tactile feel of being at a sushi bar in Tokyo or Kyoto. Our next menu, I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm going to, is called The Hunt.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to make a Midwestern game-focused menu. And, in the creative process, we're like, okay, what does that mean? And one of the chefs was like, we should lay a pelt on the table. And I'm like, all right, so like you're saying, where is that line between,
Yeah.
Epcot Center
Wow.
but also like honoring the thematic value. Like, how do we do that? Like, so we're talking about candelabras, we're talking about this. How do you make it that drippy British fox hunt?
Yeah.
I don't know. And it becomes a self-editing process where we're like, no, that's over the top. No. And I think that's something that a lot of people are not willing to do. They're not willing to throw ideas away, which I think is really important.
That really is really, really important. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your creative process, the consistency. So I read, I can't remember where, maybe it was Ruth Reichel, she said, and it was you in conversation with Ruth Reichel, and I love this as a kind of summation of your creative process, that the driving force is what if. Mm-hmm. Is that right? What if? Fill in the blank.
And the awesome part of what if is, what if it works and what if it doesn't work?
Right.
And we've had situations where we think we have this amazing idea, and then once we look at it, we're like, this is terrible. Like,
can you tell us one of those? Because that's interesting.
Let me think. I can tell you, okay, so years ago, well, there's several on the positive side. Mm-hmm. So, we say, why does food have to be put on a plate, right? Why don't we make the entire table a plate? So we roll out the silicone that covers the entire table, and we plate the final dessert on the table. And what that does is it forces another aspect of creativity, not from the aesthetic value, which is also relevant, and it's fun to come out and do that. But there's the element of, if there's 4 people at that table, and I plate the entire dessert on the table surface, you're forcing interaction. People are sharing food.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden there's this new thing going on that normally would not happen at a Michelin 3-star restaurant. People aren't, you don't share food at a Michelin 3-star restaurant. You do it at Alinea. And then there's like this, the other one that comes immediately to mind is, for years we were like, how do we make floating food? How can you make food float? Well, for a long time, like Omaro at Moto was like, we're gonna do reverse magnets and the plate's gonna float and all that. Okay, that's fine. But how do you actually make the food float? Well, you make a balloon. You inflate an apple taffy with helium, and it goes to the table, and it's floating.
I have to tell you, we did that, and these people were having, at the next table, got it at the same time, and everybody talked like Minnie Mouse for about 40 seconds after that. It was great. It's like, how did that be too? But it was really, really funny.
It's cool, right?
It was cool, and it was like participatory theater, you inhale this helium, and you're like, ah!
Right.
It was crazy.
On the converse of that, I remember when I was staging at El Bulli, Ferran made a dish that was laced with squid ink.
Oh. Squid ink.
Yes. And when I asked him why he did it, because squid ink has it doesn't taste like anything, right? It's just black. He said that he wanted people to have black lips. So essentially, the reason, his impetus for that dish was so that people would look silly when they ate it. And when you think about that, like when we talk about failures or different dishes that work and don't work, that's an interesting, to me, that was, when he said that, he goes, it's funny, right? And I'm like, no. Not really. But
Andy Kaufman funny. It's not funny.
Going back to that, it's like, what is the language of food? Mm-hmm. You can do so much with it. He literally made that dish so that people would look silly.
Yeah. No, that's not going to go
Not
over.
that it tastes good.
Yeah.
He wanted to make people look silly.
Interesting. You mentioned your very famous dessert that uses the whole table. And when I was at Alinea, Tom and I went for our 20th wedding anniversary in June. And I noticed there was no music. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I read somewhere that you are experimenting with the idea of commissioning a cello piece to go with that very dessert that you just mentioned. So talk to me about why no music, why music, how what are you thinking about there?
When we built Alinea, people were saying, like, you need to have music, you need to have speakers in the ceiling and all that. And I said, well, okay, what music do you want to play? What music do you like? And Nick would say, I like this. And I said, well, I like Guns N' Roses. So when you think about dining out, does the music, are you listening to the music because you like the music? Or does it become gray?
Right.
So for me, it was like, if it's not going to be something that's going to add to the experience, then it shouldn't be there. Just leave the music out, right?
Right.
But now we're going, this blew my mind. When we had a cellist in the restaurant, the sound of him playing a chord, C chord, literally was like a palate cleanser. So I would put Roquefort blue cheese in my mouth, which is like the strongest cheese ever.
Right.
He would play one chord, and my mind could not process what was on my palate and what was in my ear. So
Interesting.
I'm tasting blue cheese, he would play the chord, all of a sudden I didn't taste the blue cheese anymore.
Interesting.
So now we're looking at the opportunity of using music as a seasoning. Think about that.
Yeah, I am. It's kind of blowing my mind.
It's like if we're able to affect the way that you're perceiving flavor via sound, it's like salt.
Yeah, you're right. That's beautiful. I think I'm being told that I should open it up for questions, so if we can have the lights on. And I have been instructed to tell you that there are 2 mics at the front of the auditorium. And if you have a question, to please come to the front of the auditorium and ask it at the mic, because we're recording this. Yeah, and tell your name too, just for the hell of it.
Yes, my name is Colleen Laughlin, and I have been blessed and lucky to eat at both Next and Alinea and loved that. And I agree with your comment. Sometimes it's a little bit too much alcohol. Okay, but anyway, here's a question. You said Alinea could be like the Rolling Stones in a way, but how are you like the Mick Jagger of that? Can you be everywhere? Can you have many Alineas? Can you have an Alinea experience without you? So how does that? It's like, can you have a Rolling Stone cover band trained by the Rolling Stones,
Right.
but not it?
It's an interesting question in that it is difficult because, like, for instance, last night I was at Next in Aviary all night long. So I was not at Alinea last night. The people that went to Alinea last night, did they feel slighted that I wasn't there doing their chocolate on the table? That the chef de cuisine was doing it? Perhaps. If you went to a Rolling Stones concert, if you went to a U2 concert, what if you went to U2 and Bono was not on the stage? You'd be a little bit pissed off, I think. I get it. I get that point. However, what about artists? Like, what about Andy Warhol? What about people that delegate? What about people that train? What about people that nurture other artists? Thomas said to me one time, we were in the kitchen, and Corby Kummer, a very well-known food journalist and critic from The Atlantic, was in the kitchen. And Thomas was about to open Per Se in New York. And Corby said to Thomas, what are you going to do when you're in New York and you're not in Yountville? Who's going to cook? And Thomas said, the same people that cook every night. So it's the public perception of chefs is not reality. I'm sorry, it's not. I'm there virtually every night, but there are times when I'm at Next, or there are times when I'm traveling. The food is probably better when I'm not there, because people are trying harder, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Victoria, and I've been thrilled by all the talk about the really unusual and spectacular things that go on at Alinea. And obviously, by this point, the restaurant's reputation precedes it, but people who typically patronize establishments at the level of Alinea have certain expectations for what they're going to be in for. So how often, when you are in the restaurant, do you see people who are sort of taken aback or made uncomfortable by what's in front of them, and how much joy do you take in that?
I'm at Alinea 4 nights a week. And I think all of us, everybody on the staff, and this is the thing that with hospitality and not even hospitality, just being a creative person, you want people to enjoy what you create. So whether it be Thomas Masters that made a painting that is hanging in the upstairs dining room and people comment on it and they're like, wow, I really like that, or myself that comes up with a dish or whatever it is, I think it's incredibly satisfying. And this sounds cliche and it sounds like I'm blowing smoke, but it's for real. Like, this is what we do, you know? At the end of the day, you want people to like what you do, no matter what you're doing. So, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, my name is Josh, and when you were talking about food as art, I was thinking about the visual arts and how the materials that you use, they don't add sustenance and things like that. So with the way that we're elevating food, do we need to take a ethical look at the way that we view it versus poverty and hunger in the world?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, for sure. However, Alinea is not the venue to solve world hunger. That's not its purpose. We can do tons of charitable work through our leverage with Alinea. For instance, with Next, when we did the El Bulli menu, we donated one table a night and we did a Dutch auction, right? So a reverse auction. We started everything at $5,000, and every day that it didn't sell, it went down $500. Virtually everything sold out at $5,000. All of that, $387,000, went right to the University of Chicago for head and neck cancer research. And that was just like, so is Alinea going to solve world hunger? No. Do we have the opportunity to use it in a meaningful way, like I just talked about for cancer research or poverty or, you know, children's cancer or whatever it is? Yeah, and we do. But when you go to Alinea, you're not solving world hunger. You're going to an art museum.
It's also, I think, interesting to point out that sometimes the whole molecular gastronomy end of things gets a lot of play, and what doesn't get as much play is the fact that Alinea is sustainable, organic, seasonal, and that has a kind of ethical core that goes back to Chez Panisse and Alice in the 1970s, and that both of them exist coextensively. Yeah.
That's a big misconception of Alinea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you're saying, like I think that people, molecular gastronomy and all that silly stuff, people get the idea that we're growing food in like petri dishes and test tubes. And the fact of the matter is, we have, I think it's 107 local purveyors, farmers, artisans. Some of them, like there's a woman in Michigan that has a 2.2 acre organic farm. And we get all of her stuff. She only brings to us. But what do people want to latch onto? chemistry and all that stupid stuff.
But you balance it. It's not stupid. I mean, you need
It is-
sous vide just like the next guy.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, but science is a tool.
And so's the web. I mean, that's the other thing that I think is really important to note, is that Alinea is of its place in time absolutely in part because it was born out of your ability to scour the web. And
I have no idea how people cooked without the internet.
Isn't that interesting? Yes.
Yes, my name is Alana, and I am a graduate student at the School of the Art Institute, writing my thesis actually on the intersections between the culinary and art worlds. So this is a stunning situation for me. But I'm really interested in what you're saying of taking a space and making it transient, using music as an extra addition, because I would agree with you that I would say that the next movement in the culinary world is this continued increase in using art as a tool to heighten the culinary experience. So I'd be curious to ask how you, because you haven't spoken of it yet, how you would amplify the use of space, either be it Next or Alinea particularly, because I know that Martin Kastner, and I've looked at his tools, things like that, seeing the table as a stage. But I'm curious of how you would use the restaurant space itself to amplify the dining experience. And secondly, can you let me know the term you use to describe your cuisine? Because I don't know what the hell to use in my paper.
So the space, it's funny you mentioned that because we're playing with that. It's one of our most focused creative avenues right now to change, because when you think about a meal, like I said before, it's not about necessarily the food anymore, at least not at Alinea. It's about the experience. So when you think about the experience, what can we change? I mean, you can play with the food, but why not play with the environment? Mm-hmm. So, like I said, the hallway, in the summer, the entryway into Alinea, it was a pain, but we laid fresh sod throughout the entire hallway every day. And it smelled like fresh cut grass. Why? Because to me, that's summer. Mm-hmm. When you think of summer, you think of the garden, you think of fresh cut grass. So we were trying to evoke that feeling, that visceral kind of sensation. Currently, the hallway is filled with hay bales, pumpkins, and dead oak leaves. And when you walk in, it smells like fall. We originally wanted to make Alinea, we were very conscious about the spaces, and we used like different lighting to try to change the environment. But we're currently looking to take it a step further. And something that we were talking about with the MCA is, how can we make an installation? How can we make something that evokes all the senses? And we're trying to deal with that. I don't know if you've ever been to Sleep No More.
Oh, yeah.
In New York. So kind of that, imagine that with food, right? Imagine like walking through different rooms and there's different environments and then you're tasting and you're smelling, and so we're trying to work with that. But on the opposite side of that, it's a business and it's a restaurant. And you have people that are eating at this table, and then there's people that are right there as well. So what I do to you, I need to make it amendable for them. So there's like a fine line there. But we're gonna take over the MCA or
Pop-up
something like
space
that,
for that or
right?
something?
What?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, you.
Hi, my name is Jessica, and I really liked the question that you posed earlier about whether a restaurant has to be at the same address. I thought that was interesting, and I wonder, what are your thoughts on some type of Alinea take on food truck?
Aren't you glad you came?
I don't think it'll be Alinea, but why not? Our original idea, if the city of Chicago would get their
Act together.
act together, thank you, ACT, because right now it's not legal to have a food truck that you're able to prepare food in. But the idea was, imagine this, if we have Next that thematically changes once a quarter. What if, in conjunction with the menu, there was a food truck? So, if it was Paris 1906, you would delve into what was prevalent on the street in Paris in 1906. And that food truck would go around. And Thailand, and, you know, right now, Kyoto. City of Chicago.
Alinea, Alinea is the editorial symbol for beginning a new trend of thought. So with that, Grant, thank you for taking us on all kinds of new trends of thought.
Thank you.